Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com here live in Mackey Arena following Purdue's 87-68 win over Iowa in Game 2 of the Big Ten season, the finale of the December Big Ten doubleheader. This is your wrap video following that game. As you were aware, Purdue lost on Friday night at Northwestern, shockingly defying every law of college basketball groupthink and negativity and physics, I guess. The sun did come up on Saturday morning. There was a game a couple of days later, and Purdue needed to win this game, and they really left no doubt. I think you saw a Purdue team that was razor sharp from the get-go, really clicked offensively against an Iowa team that still just refuses philosophically to defend. I'm not saying that to keep that, to take anything away from what Purdue did here, but it is just the reality of playing Iowa. Oftentimes, most times, every time. But this game was more about Purdue than it was about Iowa, I think, because you wanted to see how Purdue responded on a short turnaround after a disappointing overtime loss at Northwestern, a game Purdue really should have won. But it kind of let get away via the turnover, and you wanted to see how just sharp they were coming back from that. Purdue started games well all season long, and they certainly did again today. Purdue only turns the ball over 8 times against an Iowa program that the one thing they do well defensively is oftentimes speed you up and kind of force you into mistakes. Purdue made no mistakes. Purdue again, only turned the ball over 8 times. One of those was by Will Berg in the final minute of the game. Doesn't count. It counts statistically, but it doesn't count practically. Purdue just was really good with the ball. They really took Iowa's pressure and turned it on them and just destroyed everything Iowa did with its backcourt trapping, with its three-quarter court pressure, with its full-blown press. There is this thought out there that Purdue doesn't know how to play against the press, and I think it probably should have died many months ago, if not a few years ago. But still, nevertheless, it's how Purdue's perceived. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer's added maturity this year have really changed that. Ethan Morton's been really important against that. Lance Jones has been transformative against that, and Purdue hasn't been fazed by it all season long. They did play Marquette. They did play situations in Hawaii where teams had to pressure them in the backcourt to try to get back into games, things like that. Never really mattered. I couldn't even remember off the top of my head a turnover or a really relevant mistake Purdue's made against backcourt pressure, anything like that. I'm sure there's something. I'm sure somebody will point something out, but off the top of my head right now, I can't really think of a whole lot. Purdue just absolutely dominated what Iowa was trying to do defensively, and Purdue ends up shooting 52.3% for the game, but with about 12 minutes to go, I think they were shooting 60%. And when you're up 30, the last 12 minutes of game sometimes turn into playtime a little bit. It's just kind of the sandbox, however you'd want to put it, and the stats kind of get warped. Purdue did let this get down to 24 at one point. I don't think anybody was even worried. But Iowa didn't make that run in the first 10 minutes of the second half that they've made here before, the Rick Mount game, some of the other games that Purdue kind of had to hold on for dear life at the end. Purdue handled it, and it handled it with its best players off the floor. And I think that was really telling. I think Braden Smith and Ross-Ade got a lot of needed time on the bench, a lot of rest, and you were able to just put Lance Jones and Trey Kaufman-Renn out there and kind of let them carry your offense, along with some other guys, obviously. And you weren't fazed with your second team out there either by what Iowa really needed to do to get back in this game. So kind of a game where everybody played well. Really, everybody played well. You could kind of go down the list here and be like, well, he didn't do a whole lot, but how much was needed? But I think that this was a big-time intangibles game for Purdue, too. I think you got a great game from Ethan Morton. I think his fingerprints were all over this result, even though he didn't score. He defended, he rebounded, he passed. He made great decisions offensively, 5 assists, no turnovers. Mason Gillis was really good. Camden Heide was pretty good, I thought. Caleb First was pretty good. In those kind of little things, roles, which are so important. And, Miles Colvin goes out there. He's out there to score and did some positive things in that regard, including a big basket. Insofar as a basket can be big when you're up 24 points late in the second half. Nevertheless, it kind of stopped the bleeding there for a moment and made certain that Iowa wasn't going to get within 20. But I think you got really important intangible substance. I probably could just go with one or the other, couldn't I? From a lot of different guys, on top of all the big stuff you get from Zach-Edey, who is 9 for 10 from the floor, scores 25 points, 12 rebounds, and we take him for granted so much we don't even bring him to the press conference because it's just part of the landscape at this point, and that's just kind of the way it is for Purdue. Fletcher Lawyer was really good in 21 minutes, really good. I think Purdue just absolutely sucked the life out of Iowa in the first half because, when you're a really good offensive rebounding team, right, you think about like Zach-Edey at the rim, and you think about short misses, you think about post misses, you think about runners in the lane that roll off. That's where your offensive rebounding advantage should really show up because your rebounders are established, they're around the rim, they're trackable rebounds, things like that. But there was a stretch in the first half where Purdue missed a 3, got the rebound. Purdue missed a 3, got the rebound. Purdue made a 3. And I think that sequence unfolded twice, and that just had to be death, for an Iowa team that really didn't want anything to do with the defensive end, really couldn't stack up physically against what Purdue has around the basket. When Purdue just keeps getting offensive rebounds and then scoring off them. I don't know what the second chance numbers were here. Only 17 points. That doesn't sound like it tells. It's probably accurate, but it doesn't really tell the story of just how much offensive rebounding and what that means in terms of Purdue imposing its will on a basketball game. That was a really big deal, I think. When you get offensive rebounds and then you make people pay, when you get to the foul line because the other team can't guard you, as is the reality of Zach-Edey, and Purdue makes you pay, that's a really big deal. That was what Purdue did not do at Northwestern. Along with taking care of the basketball, Purdue did a much better job. And again, nobody's trying to miss free throws here. You're either a great free throw shooter or you're a good free throw shooter, you're an average free throw shooter. Eventually your percentages are what you are. And Purdue's percentages are kind of what Purdue is. But game to game, there will be variance. And when you want, in situations like at Northwestern where Purdue could have separated itself with better foul shooting, that's just part of the variance. But this was part of the variance too, and this was a much better example of Purdue really making Iowa pay for not being able to guard Zach-Edey and not being able to guard Trey Kaufman-Ran and just not being up to the job physically, as so few people are. Zach-Edey draws 12 fouls. Trey Kaufman-Ran draws 7. Braden Smith draws 6. Caleb First draws 5. Game changer that they started keeping that stat in these box scores. That is such a relevant stat, and it is so much appreciated that they actually do that in box scores now, mainstream. Big time contribution here for the by the stat keeping community. So we want to give them the proper credit for what they've done for the game, and thank you. But that's part of Purdue's winning formula, and you're not maxing out the formula if you don't make your free throws at a higher rate. Purdue's 11 of 16. I think they only missed 1-1-1. Just 1-1-1. But nevertheless, I think this was pretty much everything you wanted from Purdue after that Northwestern game on Friday night. So I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to say here. Braden Smith, you kind of take him for granted a little bit here, and he bounces back from a rough game at Northwestern. He's just masterful in this game, absolutely masterful. With the Rajon Rondo line of 2 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds against only 1 turnover, 2 steals. Again, draws a bunch of fouls. Can't say enough about Lance Jones, what he's added to this team. Northwestern wasn't the highlight of his season, he bounces back, has a great game here against Iowa, in which he was a really important piece of this puzzle, because backcourt pressure is where he has really, really helped Purdue to having that extra quickness, that extra burst, that extra giddy up, that extra whatever noun you want to use, whatever physical attribute you want to use, plus the fact that he's your secondary ball handler out there more often than not. It's really hard to press a team with 2 point guards out there who can accelerate past people, and that's Braden Smith and that's Lance Jones. So for him to bounce back in this game is situationally relevant too, in addition to just being big picture relevant in terms of him bouncing back from the Northwestern game. I don't know about you, but I didn't view Purdue all that differently after the Northwestern game as I did before the Northwestern game, because I think if you were paying close attention, you saw in Honolulu that the turnover thing was a problem, and it was going to get Purdue at some point. It sucks for Purdue that it got it in a Big Ten game. It sucks for Purdue it got it at all, but it really sucks it got it in a Big Ten game, one that you very easily could have won if you just could turn the ball over 13 times instead of 17 times, things like that. But maybe that was Purdue's scared straight moment. I don't know. But the turnovers are going to be an issue that they have to be on top of every single game from here on out. It is the single biggest existential threat to their success. All season long, all off-season long, I said that was three-point shooting. Assuming that doesn't fall off a cliff, it's going to be turnovers. The thing Matt Painter, spent the whole offseason talking about as well. So I think that's what I got. I didn't thank up at the top, once again, the Purdue Union Club Hotel. I was negligent once again in remembering my sponsorship responsibilities. So my profound apologies there. I will make it up here now by mentioning the Purdue Union Club Hotel. Thank you so much to them for their support as always. We appreciate it very much. So from Purdue's 97-66 win over Iowa here in Mackey Arena, this is Brian Neubert from goldenblock.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And when I next speak to you, I will be in Canada after the Alabama game up in Toronto. I will be doing this video in French, so stay tuned. It could be a real treat. So thank you, everybody.